Hello, I'm Kathleen Bade. We are talking to superintendents across the country, and we're headed to Maryland right now, specifically Harford County Public Schools. And with us is Dr. Sean Bulson. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about your area specifically and some of the challenges that you face.
Harford County, Northeast Maryland. We're sort of an urban, suburban, and rural area. We have a little of everything. We are in a community that's very, very much military connected. We have a huge military employer in the community, so that adds to our personality a little bit. But we're also in Maryland, where there is so much going on because we're in the middle of this sort of lifetime or once in a lifetime reform of education and our blueprint for Maryland's future. And so there's just so much hitting us right now, but it's an exciting time to be in Maryland.
Tell us a little bit more about that blueprint.
Interestingly, it was something that was thought up before the pandemic, and it focuses really on broad areas. It's kind of the reform of all reforms because we're touching on everything from the teaching profession to the type of work that should be done with schools, how schools are structured and funded. There's a big emphasis on universal pre-K, and so we're trying to do this all at once. It's a lot.
And why was it even attempted in the first place? Like, what prompted it all? And there might be other people that are listening to you and thinking, maybe we could institute some of these changes.
Well, I think like everywhere, we're looking at how our students are performing against the world and worried that we're losing a competitive edge. And Maryland had traditionally been a state that was performing very high in the nation and has started to slip a little bit. So it was an effort from leaders across the state to really put us back on track.
And you were recently named Maryland Superintendent of the Year in 2023. So that's a pretty big accomplishment, especially in that climate. What do you attribute that accolade to?
A lot of it has to do with the work with my colleagues. I mean, we only have 24 superintendents, and we have these opportunities to learn from each other and move things forward. But we've also lost a lot of people. So, even though I'm only in my 6th year in the state as superintendent, I'm now 5th in seniority. And so it's really been about leadership among the others. And so I think the Superintendent of the Year honor is, a lot to do with the leadership I was able to take among them. I've served as president of the association there. But it's also just nice to have recognition for what's going on in public education. I can celebrate my team. I can celebrate my colleagues. It's really been a nice honor.
And what did you want to highlight when you accepted that award? Because I'm sure that there were things that, none of us do this alone. And I'm sure there's things that you wanted to highlight and showcase.
A lot of it has to do with superintendents taking their voice back, because I think there's been a lot of mistrust over the years. And, business is saying public schools aren't doing everything they need to be doing. I think we hear that as society. There's a lot more criticism. And I think as school systems, as the experts in education, we need to demonstrate that to the rest of the world that, we can do this. We can turn around the performance. We can, have amazing experiences for our kids. But, we need to be a big part of writing those plans, not playing defense against them.
What are some of the initiatives then or programs that you've brought about that you're proud of and excited about?
2 things that we talk a lot about in Harford, and they're opposite ends of the spectrum. We've all experienced the challenges with mental health in our students, in our staff, and the families in the community. And we've had some amazing opportunities to do different things on mental health. I can talk about some of those initiatives briefly. One of them is we're working with Tufts University on a program called HOPE, which stands for Healthy Outcomes for Positive Experiences. And it's looking at how you help create healthy adults by working with children. And it's a very proactive approach, and that's something we love. We've had some amazing other initiatives around mental health. We're working with a tremendous partner who's here at the conference called Care Solace that has just been an amazing resource. So everything around mental health, our fantastic relationship with our health department, who's very invested in working with us and our kids. But then on the other end of it, it's the career readiness work. Over the last 16 months, we've gone from 0 apprentices to over 120 as of today. And new partnerships with 100 different businesses in town, and just an entirely different experience for students coming out of high school and having a high school experience to maybe take a different path right after high school. Maybe starting with work, using what they're doing to pay for college as opposed to jumping right into college. But it's also helping some kids really decide where they want to go. And so this work-based experience is a big part of the blueprint. But we're seeing a shift in sort of college going, like post-high school experiences. And I think this is on the front of it.
Can you give us one of those specific examples of an apprenticeship that you think is particularly successful that you've seen?
Oh gosh, we have so many. For example, so one of the stories I heard recently was a young lady who was getting her certified nursing assistant credential, and she did an apprenticeship related to that. And what I heard about her is her experience was she's going to use that work, have the salary, and that's how she's going to pay for college. So I don't know that her final plan is to be a nurse, but that's a great way to jump into the workforce, add to those sort of lifetime earnings early. And so that's the type of experience we're hoping for, that students, choose those paths. I had another young man who's going through a culinary program, and his mom spoke to me the other night, and she's like, "Yeah, school wasn't right for him. He didn't love it, but once he got to do this, everything changed, and his passion and his focus." And so, great to see those types of things, coming back as a student, and it's not just what's the next test you have to take, what's going to be great on your college application. Have those experiences, and frankly, the employers in town, because they're all so hungry for good employees, they've been so enthusiastic, and, they're getting to see the real talent that these kids are bringing to the table.
So it's a win-win because they're also building a resume. I didn't have anything on a resume when I graduated high school.
Amen.
Not one thing, to be frank. You talked about this unique mix that you have of military and rural community and sort of like city kids as well, all within your district. Talk about the challenges that presents.
Well,
and opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the evolution of politics and education over the last so many years, and we have all of it. We have both ends of the spectrum very well represented in the county, and I think it's a county with pretty traditional values, and so those come into conflict at times. And the ability to have everyone at the table, and sort of my style is to be an includer. I like to sort of bring people together and encourage them to treat each other respectfully, and it helps us come to some solutions. But it also, there's so much opportunity in our community because it's so diverse. I mean, we can point our kids in every direction, and it's a nice mix, but it does bring us challenges.
Yeah, and navigating it. So your leadership philosophy, you would describe it as what?
Includer is probably the best way to describe. I really feel like my job is to let others really be the experts, and I'll keep putting them together to come up with creative solutions. And so it's constantly navigating what's the next thing we need to address, who needs to be at the table to do it, and I can just sort of keep that happening. And we're also in a different era with like employees, and with such a tight workforce, you need people to feel comfortable in their work. And so what we do around culture and climate, we want people to have that psychological safety in their work. And so it's a lot more, and you can achieve that, A, by being nice, but B, giving them more agency in what they're doing. And so it's finding ways to let, people's engagement in the work and their voice and their experiences come through, and they can see themselves in it. And I think that, my hope is that we're building a workforce that, wants to stay engaged, because we've seen so many people departing over the last few years.
Yeah, the teacher shortage and all of that is very real. So you're saying your philosophy is making them feel like an important link in the chain.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they are. There shouldn't be a like. They really are. So.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, let's talk about something else that is constant, and that's the ever-changing technology that teachers are having to learn, and students are probably way ahead of the educators in some way. How are you managing that? And also with the entrance of artificial intelligence?
It's like every innovation, on some level, we need to get out of their way, because, that is the challenge, that, we're slowing them down because they're using things that we're not comfortable with. So that needs to stop. But that's probably been the dynamic with every generation. Like every new technology, every innovation that comes along, the younger sort of early adopters are outpacing. But our role, we still need to be the ones who are helping put some guardrails up. We need to be helping them see the skills they're going to need later.
Right.
So, the shift of what's happening in education is, we know there are skills they need to be successful in this current world. they're not necessarily what's in our curriculum today. And we can hear from employers, we can hear from others about, well, here's what they really need to be able to do. And so in the education side, we need to keep like pushing them toward those particular skills. What are the things that they need to be successful in life outside of school? And a lot of it has to do with how they collaborate with others. A lot of it has to do with just personal responsibility. But then also making sure that we're not getting in the way too much of the technology, because they have to learn to be experts in that, because, they're going to be using that in their lives. So.
And you were talking about kind of the social skills that'll be necessary to move through life. And certainly the pandemic put a major pause on a lot of that.
Yeah, that took a hit.
Yeah. So how are you trying to address that, not just the social skills, but also the lost academic skills that came with that?
With the academics, I feel we need to push it. We need to keep working at a high level. We shouldn't be going back too much, because we don't want to get stuck there. Because these students, we really need to keep pushing them. So I think if we just stay on course with high expectations, and really focusing on the rigor, making sure they're pushing themselves, I think that's going to be the best strategy for overcoming some of those deficits. And we plug in where we need to. You can do it on the fly. It doesn't need to be the whole plan. It's just to sit and do what we missed last year, right? And so I think that's an important part of you just moving forward and pushing past this, and recognize that they have some different skills now. I think the other part is, yes, we do need to be more deliberate about having in-person experiences. Not to the point where it's unproductive. I mean, it's not everyone has to be in work all the time, with no more virtual meetings, because they really have a place, and that's it. That's our life now. But being deliberate about putting people together, having opportunities. I mean, we created a virtual school during the pandemic. It serves a fantastic purpose, but even they now, once or twice a month, they bring all the kids in just to get to know each other. And so we even though, the virtual is kind of the best way for them, they make sure that they build in some, personal time for people to just be present with each other.
So trying to take advantage of some of the good things that came out of the pandemic, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, those important pandemic relief funds expiring, and hindsight is always 2020. So when you look at what you spent some of the relief funds on, what do you think was worth the money that you would want other people to maybe know about?
We had a funny little thing. We hired full-time subs for all of our schools. And that's turned into this amazing resource. And that was something we never would have considered doing before, just because it gives the schools a little flexibility every day when either someone doesn't show up or you need some help over here. So we're trying to figure out now, how do we, keep that service in place? And we've had to trim it down a little bit. But that was just one little thing we did that we said, this really is fantastic.
And what are your priorities as you look ahead to 2024 as the superintendent? And have they changed over time?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, we're balancing, whether it's the work in mental health, or it's everything around the teacher shortage, where it's, cries about scores not being where they need to be. So it's, constantly getting in what's going to create the circumstances to get the student achievement we need. I think those things that create the circumstances are very different now than they were just a few years ago. But it's always going to come back to what's the achievement we're trying to get to for our students, and what does success look like? Because I think that's changing too. Like, what we're hearing from the businesses, they don't necessarily want the product we were producing 10 years ago. They want people who are more future ready, who are more able to be successful in the current workplace with all the social challenges that they're experiencing, just like we are in schools. So I think it's shifting to really create, those outcomes for our students to meet the demands of like all these changes we've seen.
And with that ever-changing educational landscape, what is your best advice to other superintendents in these uncertain times?
Take care of your people. I would start there, because they are the essential resource. And they're the ones you need to take care of the kids. So whatever it is to help them feel supported, and to have the resources they need to be successful, to me, that's going to be the formula. And everything else, if I can have a strong team out there with the kids, then, my job is a whole lot easier.
And that probably figures into community outreach. We hear a lot from superintendents that they're having to form these business partnerships in order to make public education work these days. Can you talk about going out into the community?
We have a little of that. We don't necessarily go out in the community asking for money very often, but I do know that some places have found ways to solve that. We're really looking for their partnership to help us understand what they need. And again, we have great resources. As I said, we have a large military installation, and so they're amazing partners. They mentor for us. I have students in a very high-end science and math academy, and every one of those students has a mentor who is, an advanced degree scientist from Aberdeen Proving Grounds. And so knowing that these businesses can come in and help more in kind, and that's the type of thing that I feel we need. And that connection with the workplace is again, it's growing for us. And we want students to have those experiences. And that we're going to need a lot of help, whether it's apprenticeships or internships or just days to visit places and see what's out there. And so those types of partnerships are really what we're valuing.
Sounds like a very important piece of your blueprint.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Sean Bulson, so nice to talk to you. And we wish you all the luck in spearheading the efforts in Harford County Public Schools.
Thank you so much.